Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Boy, am I excited to show you some Humankind. I've got about 5 to 10 hours in the game so far. I played a little bit in open beta, and I'm really excited to show you some of the ins and outs and the comparisons to the other games that we love in the same genre, such as the Endless series or Civilization. And there are plenty of comparisons to go around, but there's also some subtle and some wide differences that we'll explore. I'm about halfway through a game that, when you launch the game for the first time, it kind of gives you through a tutorial game. We're not going to do that this time because I want a little bit more free reign to be able to show you the ins and outs and everything that I've discovered to make your first time in Humankind a little bit easier. To start off with, we're just going to click the new game and go at it. Now, I'm going to try to keep the pace very reasonable because for a lot of us, this is the first time in Humankind, and I want to be able to explain some of the touches and the differences and the mechanics. That way we have a good base to learn on. Now, just like in other 4X games, you can pick how many people you're playing against. You can keep going all the way up. You can go all the way down. It's pretty simple and self-explanatory. We're going to keep it at 6 because it's just the standard size, right? We're not even going to change up any of these personalities. On the pace, you can see a normal game takes 300 turns maximum. Fast goes down to 150. Slow goes up to 450. And this is important because a lot of games that you finish will be because you've reached the end of the turn max, and then it's just a comparison of your fame score from there. And you can also dictate a little bit more by through these end conditions. Last human standing, which doesn't necessarily mean what you would think it. You can still reach the end of the turn limit. Time limit, which kind of removes the default, like I will kill everybody else. And space race, which says, hey, you can either reach the end of the turn limit or send a mission to Mars. And in any of these, whether it be last human standing, time limit, or space race, if the world is unfit for human life, the game also ends then. We're going to keep it on default, nice and easy, and then out to the difficulties. From everything I've seen, the tutorial kind of starts you off at town and hamlet area of difficulty, which is sort of the easy. The metropolis and the nation is the medium difficulty, and then everything beyond that is rather difficult. We're going to keep it on nation, as we're familiar with these type of games, and we want a little bit of a challenge. And then here we have peaceful mode set to the obvious no. And then finally we have the world size. When you highlight over the world size, it says how many players are recommended for that world. So that's the reason why we kept 6 players, normal world size. We don't want to bite off more than we can chew. There's also the typical world details where you can really randomize how the world is going to look as standard in a 4X type of game. And then over on the right here, you can see the avatar. In the main menu, you can design and customize your avatar, unlocking more features as you progress through the game. This is as close as I could get to my debonair mug. It's not even close. This dude is much more handsome than I am. But without further ado, let's launch. Quick note on this loading screen, which, by the way, the loading times are not bad. If anybody's seen the show Vikings, doesn't this look like Lagatha? After the loading screen, there's a short movie. I don't want to spoil it. I want to save it for your playthrough so you can experience it for the first time. The movies between eras are pretty good, and I want you to enjoy them in your own game. Now, we are going to compare and contrast to Civilization only in the fact that it is the most well-known 4X strategy game out there, and probably the one you are most familiar with. I'm not going to beat it to death, but I definitely want to show you some of the differences that gives you a good footing in Humankind. The first of these differences is you start off with a hunting party. You don't settle a city first. I know there's been a lot of footage from the previous builds of Humankind, so you may have seen some of this, but I still want to touch upon it for those of you who have never seen Humankind before. Over in the top left, we have our sort of tribal name. We're just a nomadic tribe. We haven't founded anything. In fact, we're still in the Neolithic era, which does deviate from Civilization because in Civilization, you're coming out of the Neolithic era. You're founding that first city. When you select this sort of empire button here, this sigil here is just one that I chose for my avatar. There's many that you could choose for yourself. It shows you what it takes to advance through each era. Now, to go from one era to the next normally takes 7 stars, but for the Neolithic era into the Ancient, it only takes 1. And we can gain these stars through a few different options. 1, by having 5 population. 2, by getting 10 science, or 3, hunting a total of 5 animal units. Over on this side, you see our unit selection screen. The unit selection screen may seem a little bit different, and this is one of the best pieces of advice I can give you for your first dip into Humankind. Take your time. I've seen some ridiculous complaints on the Steam where people just launched into a new game without using the tutorial, and then they complain that they don't know what they're doing. Well, this is a brand new game, and not only a brand new game, it's a huge, epic game, right? You're not expected to know what you're doing the first 10, 20, 30, 1,000 turns. It's going to take you a good bit of time to learn it. To highlight a few things out of this unit selection screen, you can see we only have one unit, namely a tribe. Now, if we gain 20 food, we'll get another tribe unit, and then we could separate them and they can go explore off in their different ways. On this case, we've started on a hill. In fact, the hill is so deep that we would not be able to go directly down. So we have to go along this river instead. You can see we've used one movement action, so now we have 3 left. We'll just move on to the side and see what we find. Zooming out a little bit, we notice there's some copper. Now this is important. These little symbols mean that they're strategic resources. In this case, this is an unknown strategic resource because we haven't learned the tech to reveal what it is. Your tribe understands that it's something different. We just don't know what it is yet. It looks like this is a coastline, but I still want to get some visibility over there just to make sure it doesn't go any further. So we're going to now take our movement here. Oh, and as luck would have it, we actually accomplished one of the first world deeds. We were the first to discover, Vinakunka. So this beautiful mountain range is the world deed that we accomplished. It is the mountain range of Vinakunka. And because we're the ones who first discovered it, we were given 50 fame points. Now, if we select our empire here, we can go to show deeds. And you'll notice every game will have different types of world deeds that you will be able to discover and get those fame points. And remember, fame is the name of the game. We've also discovered another resource. This one is gemstone. And when we highlight over gemstone, you can see all the different effects. We'll get to more of that later. Right now, it's not really a huge concern for us as we are just a tribe. Now, when we're moving, you can notice that this cliff and this hill are a little different looking, and that's because we can actually move down into this one. And as luck would have it, there's a curiosity here. Curiosities are going to hold either science or food or other things that are going to help your tribe advance.
Just because a culture died out doesn't mean it wasn't worthy of study.
Now, this curiosity was an ancient encampment. It gave us 3 science and 5 influence. More on those later as well. Now, you'll notice, too, we've got an update over here. We actually have 3 out of 10 science advanced a little bit into that second criteria to earn a star. We will continue exploring because we are desperate to find some food, some animals, or some more science. And now that we've used all of our movement points, we have nothing left we can do, so we hit the magical end turn button. It looks like this is a great place with a lot of resources, but we can show and hide the outputs of these resources in these tiles by clicking this button down here. And while there is a lot of resources down here, the tiles themselves aren't too majestic. A lot of them are only 1 yield total. Alas, there's another curiosity and we will head towards it. And for this reason, I recommend you only moving 1 tile at a time. If you start moving multiple tiles, you may run past some of these curiosities. Let's see what this one holds. We found another ancient encampment with 2 science and 5 influence. I'm looking over here to the northeast and I've noticed that there's horses, incense, and copper. Now, copper and horses, you can tell because their diamonds are strategic resources, which ultimately means they will probably have some sort of military benefit. Now, you'll notice these dashed lines. These are the different regions. When you zoom out a little bit, you can get a bigger picture of what the individual regions look like. This will come important later when we're putting down an outpost. We're going to go ahead and end a turn here, and I'm going to move up towards here because I think this is going to be a great place to put down an outpost. What an outpost means is saying, hey, this territory is ours. Now, in this case, our hunting party can put down outposts just like a lot of other units can. So we're going to move in here to a place that we think would be best served with an outpost. This looks decent here. I was thinking about moving one more, but I would rather the outpost be positioned behind these mountains. Kind of gives it a little bit of strategic advantage. And we can see if we click the yields, there's a lot of interesting yields here. A lot of production, some food. We can go ahead and click on outpost, and then the game's going to give us a recommendation where we'd want to put an outpost in this territory. This one looks like it has a total of 20 yields. And I'll show you more about the yields later and how much different they are than what you may be used to in Civilization. But you can see here it's a 16 food and only a 4 production. That's not as balanced as I would hope it to be. Whereas this one is a 10 food and a 10 production. That's a little bit more balanced. We'll highlight around here for a little bit and see if there's any big differences. Another interesting point for this outpost selection area is when you put down an outpost, you will only be able to gather the resources from immediately around it. But when we become a city, we'll be able to expand beyond that. And if you notice, we're right up against this region border here, so I think this may actually be the better tile. So we're going to right click over here, and you can see to found this outpost, it's going to cost us 5 influence, which is great that we had those curiosities because they've given us the influence that we needed to be able to found an outpost. Now, it will take us a couple turns to get there, but that's okay. All right, our first outpost has been founded. Now, once you've found the outpost, it will take a certain amount of turns based on the production of the tiles around it. In this case, 7 turns. But we've noticed too, we have found another curiosity. This one looks like a food-oriented curiosity. And you also maybe remember that we actually started in this tile here. And that's because curiosities can appear from anywhere. So we will definitely head back in that direction. We've also found another curiosity. We're first going to gather this one that's closer, and then we'll move down here to get it. Something to be said about moving onto and off of rivers. You can see here that we only have 1 movement left, which is good. Because when we move up here, you'll see the icon says, hey, you're about to move onto a river. Anytime you move onto a river, you lose all of your movement points for that turn.
Delicious. Though next time, it might be better if you washed it first.
This was a great curiosity. You can see that we have found 15 food from a freshwater harvest. And in doing so, we've also unveiled another curiosity down here. Only 5 more food, and then we'll be able to expand our population to 2. Now, one small difference in Humankind and Civ is that you'll often get events like this. In this event, we have basically happened upon another tribe, and we were given a couple of options. And this is where I really do like Humankind's sort of role-playing elements, because beyond all the numbers, beyond everything, there's sort of this feeling of how you want your culture to grow, what decisions your people would make. And in this case, we can either withdraw because they could be sick or cursed, or we could welcome the tribe. It does say the chances of triggering another narrative event will be increased from selecting this one, but we'll get a new army growing tribe next to our hunting party. And I think in this case, the juice is worth the squeeze. We'll definitely take some more population. And just like that, you can see we now have a growing tribe and a hunting party. Now, they're pretty much equal. They have the same combat strength. They're just different by name. But another reason why this is fortuitous, because we can now explore with 2 different units. And you can see our total population is 2 out of 5. Now, because this unit is sort of trapped behind this other unit, we have to combine and then separate. And it's because we can't really go through the unit. Next turn, we'll be able to separate them again, and then they can go on to their own ways. All right, time to separate. We'll move 1 down here so they can scoop around back to that curiosity. And now that they are separated, you can see they have 2 more actions left. We'll head back down through our outpost. And I thought we saw a curiosity over here, so let's head down. There it is, right there. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to travel down this hill. We are. Another 1 science and 5 influence for an ancient encampment. Oh, will you look at this? It's our first animal. In this case, this is a mammoth. Now, if we were to try to attack this mammoth, you can see the preview here says the mammoth has a strength of 13, and we only have a strength of 10. We will get into some battles here in a minute, but this isn't one that I really like. Now, if we combined our 2 tribes, we would have a higher strength. I think we'd fare much better against the mammoth. Why would we kill the mammoth? Because ultimately, it could help us get towards a star, and it also would even give us food or gold. For now, though, we will steer clear, and we have found another curiosity. We'll head that way. And of course, as soon as I move this way, another curiosity pokes up over here, which there is something to be said for that. Because we moved on a hill, our vision is much greater. That is another big difference between civilization and humankind. There's actually elevation, which adds a lot of strategic value to combat and movement. Will you look at this? This curiosity was nuts, which was worth 10 food, which has increased our tribe size. But now that we have 2 tribes in this party, I think we have a good enough strength to be able to take on that mammoth over there. So why don't we go ahead and scoop up that food and then head towards the mammoth? Our other tribe is heading towards that other curiosity, hoping that it was still there.
Do it.
And there it is. Notice that we didn't have vision of it until we moved onto the hill. We'll be able to get that next turn. In the bottom, we've noticed that a nomadic tribe has reached the ancient era as the Nubians. So that means we're a little bit behind the power curve. Someone else is already advanced. In fact, 2 tribes have. The Mycenaeans have also advanced. I don't think we're too far away, though. That curiosity scored us another 2 science and 5 influence. With this much influence, you might be thinking, hey, maybe it's time to flow down another outpost. But for every outpost you grab, the cost goes up. And you'll notice that we can't claim this territory with an outpost for at least 20 influence. And we're only at 15. Let's start heading back towards that
This way.
food curiosity.
Onwards.
Oh, never mind. There's actually 2 curiosities on the way where we last saw the mammoth. So we'll head that way. And with this curiosity, which gave us another 2 science and 5 more influence, we've unlocked our Era Star. Now, because we unlocked our Era Star, you notice that we were given a reward of 20 more fame. The 20 fame combined with our fame for finding the natural wonder still has us in first place. Now that we have unlocked enough stars to advance to the era, it's time to do so. We'll click our Empire screen, and that's when we see our options of which culture to unlock. You'll notice, as we saw before, the Nubians and the Mycenaeans have already been taken. Now, there is a lot of cultural options for each era. To find out more about them, click on More Details, and you'll see a few different items in here. First is a unique trait that'll be retained throughout the eras. In other words, no matter who else we evolve into, we will always have this trait. And then there'll be either or, and sometimes both, an emblematic district and an emblematic unit. Now, I'm using the word emblematic because that's what Humankind calls them. But let's not get too fancy. They're just unique units and unique districts. Something to keep an eye out for is the unique unit. Now, the Markabata has 24 strength, and it's also a ranged unit. But in the bottom there, you'll notice it has a prerequisite for horses. Well, that's when we go back to our screen and go, are we going to have access to horses? And yes, we will. Now, there's not a certain number of horses that this one tile contains. This is just considered one horse resource. So, for instance, on the Assyrian Raiders, it just requires one horse resource in order to start producing Assyrian Raiders. Later, there will be some units that say, hey, we need 2 horses and 1 copper. It doesn't use those 2 horses and that 1 copper. It just says, these are the amount of resources you need to have. Another slight difference from the strategic resources in civilization. In this case, I think we're going to go with the Babylonians. The Babylonians have a strong, unique trait, plus 2 science per researched technology on the capital. And eventually, you're going to have 20 to 30 technologies that you've researched. So this will be 40 to 60 bonus science per turn. Now, the later on in the game you get, this gets to be less significant. But to start with, I don't think it's a bad idea. Their unique district is the Astronomy House, which gives you even more science per adjacent Farmer's Quarter, which is another district. We'll talk about districts soon. But what's powerful about this is this Astronomy House counts as both a Farmer's Quarters and a Research Quarter. So when you put two Astronomy Houses together, they'll be able to feed off of each other because they'll both be considered Farmer's Quarters as well. And then finally, we have a unique unit that I am going to butcher. I'm going to say Sabu Secasta. Now, the Sabu Secasta is not a range unit, but it's a very strong anti-cavalry unit, but it requires copper. And you'll remember from earlier that we will have a source of copper. So we're just going to go ahead and accept the Babylonians. I failed to mention that you actually have to advance to the next turn to be able to enter that era. And before we could do so, it gave us another event. This event talks about what our tribe's legacy is going to be based on the beasts and the plants of the land and the sea that we have found. And we have 3 options. And these are permanent legacy traits depending on which one we add. You can see the Makers adds +1 industry per population on any city and outpost. Then there's Plant Lore, which gives us +1 food per population. And then Astronomy, which gives us +1 science per population. I think we're going to continue around really trying to amp up our science advantage here in this early game. So we're going to select Storytellers. Now you'll notice that our tribes have been automatically upgraded to Scouts. This happens whenever you advance to the first to the second era. Our Scouts are a little bit stronger with a strength of 13 instead of that strength of 10. And now that we have 2 of them, I feel confident taking down this mammoth. Before we do so, we need to decide where we're going to attack from. Now, you may first see that attacking from the higher ground would be a good advantage, as would be in any case, except this higher ground also has a river, which will make it harder for us to attack from. So in this case, I think we're going to loop around and go to this high ground and see where the mammoth goes. Who am I kidding? We're both on equal footing now, and we have the advantage, 26 to 13. So let's just get to it. We right-click, and that's when we can begin the battle. Now, we actually get some tactical battle. Yet another difference between the Civilization series and Humankind. Now, this first stage of battle, you get to decide, are we going to instantly resolve, manual battle, or retreat? We're going to choose manual battle so that we can highlight some of the tactical differences. Now, the first is the deployment stage. We get to pick where we want to move these folks. We can literally move them around anywhere we want. But you'll notice some places have a penalty. When we put ourselves on the river, it gave us a -3 for river crossing status. So we're going to keep ourselves on the normal plane. I don't necessarily want to leave this unit to deploy off of this tile, even though it has woods, which gives us the increased combat strength against range attacks. Last I checked, mammoths didn't have a range attack. And then we still have that reduced combat strength because we're crossing the river. So we're just going to move them back 1 tile. And I think that'll be good. We'll just go ahead and click End Deployment. Now, because we're the aggressors, we get to go first. We're going to select one of our folks, and you notice the mammoth is actually uphill. It's not great for us, but they're also in a river. Kind of serves us well. Now, in the top here, you can see that we're going to lose between 7 and 25 health, and the mammoth is going to lose between 22 and 33. We'll go ahead and right-click to assume the attack. And then we're going to move these folks up to our other tile here. The mammoth attacks, does some damage, and we notice that the mammoth is almost done. We can attack now that the mammoth moved, and the mammoth dies. We've gained 20 gold from the spoils. You also may have noticed that when we came upon these tiles, there's something called a sanctuary. Now, sanctuaries you can ransack. And the reason why you'd ransack them is A, it would remove the sanctuary, which is probably where the animals are coming from. That could have been where that mammoth spawned from. But we'll also get some bonus for ransacking this sanctuary. As soon as you're able to, you probably want to convert your outposts into cities. The first one is free and does not require any influence, but in this case, our outpost is still being created. Perhaps the 10 food and 10 production would have been a better tile. But because we've reached another era, we actually get to open up the technology screen. And this is where you get to see the beautiful tech chart. And it goes on and on and on, and is a decent sized tech chart. For now though, you can see that we have 4 starting options: calendar, domestication, carpentry, and city defense. Unfortunately, it's saying we're going to take 34 turns to do it because we're only getting 1 science per turn. I think we're just going to go ahead and stick with calendar. I like the granary. It gives us +2 food per farmer and an additional farmer slot. And we'll go over that just as soon as we have a city to show you. It also has the artisan's quarter, which allows us to extract luxury resources. Luxury resources are the ones that are in the diamond shape. Not this diamond shape, but the actual diamond shape. Our hunting party is ready to ransack the sanctuary. All we do is click the ransack button here, and whatever tile is available to be ransacked will highlight. And by the end of that next turn, we'll have another 10 gold because of the ransack. All right, our outpost is finally finished. Now, once you have an outpost or a city, you can look up. This is what they call FIMS: food, industry, money, and science. The numbers here come from the aggregate of all the tiles around the outpost and the outpost itself. You can see that this outpost has 4 food and 2 production from the outpost itself. And when we highlight over food up top, you can see that it has +4 food from the outpost and +12 from the exploitation, which is all the tiles around it. Same thing for industry. We have 2 industry from the outpost and 2 from its exploitation, which looks like it's coming from this tile here. Now you may be wondering, so where's the science coming from? Well, remember earlier, we selected astronomy. And for that, we're getting +1 science per turn. But now that we have an outpost, we can actually evolve the outpost into a city. The cities have a lot more options than what they can build. You can see here, the only thing that this outpost, for instance, can do is move. Once we complete our calendar progress, we'd also be able to put some artisan quarters on some of these luxury resources, but that would take some influence. But we don't want to sit on just one outpost for long, so let's go ahead and evolve the outpost into a city. When you do that, some more things happen. You'll notice that your city has a main plaza. It's kind of like the capital of your city. It gives us plenty of resources in and of itself. And you can see those on the tooltip to the left. You'll also see population. We only have 1 population right now. Now, because of our food output, we'll continue to gain 1 population every 5 turns until we get to 8 population. And this limitation of 8 is based on these number of slots. You can see here, right now, because of our policy, we have everything in balance. Well, we want to do city growth. City growth will prioritize putting these populations in food and industry before it does money and science. And you can see that through here. And there's a few other options. For instance, if you wanted to prioritize economic exports, it would prioritize putting population in industry and money before it did food and science. We're going to keep it on city growth for now because, again, we want to grow. The other thing I really wanted to show you about was stability. This is one of the more difficult mechanics to manage in Humankind. This stability, you can see that we have an 85 stability, but we're gaining stability, right? We're not stretched too thin, so we're doing just fine, and we're going to get to 100 eventually. But you notice that we already have access to some districts down here that we can build. For instance, the Farmer's Quarter. Now, the Farmer's Quarter gives us +1 food, but more importantly, it gives us +1 farmer's slot on the city or outpost. So instead of it being 2 here, it would be a 3. And then there's our Astronomy House. The Astronomy House, remember, is our unique district. It's going to give us -10 to stability, but +3 to science per adjacent farmer's quarters. Let's go ahead and put down a farmer's quarters to start, and we do that just by clicking farmer's quarter and then selecting which tile. Now, the game will give you its recommendation. By putting it in this tile here, it is plus 10 food and minus 10 to stability. We kind of expected that. Putting it here is plus 5 to food. And this is because of what it's exploiting from around it. Because just like your main plaza in your city capital, it's exploiting from the resources around it. Now to start with, you'll notice that the only things highlighted are the districts around us. And that's because you have to sprawl out from your city. You can't just say, hey, I want to build it over here. Now, in the future, there are districts that you can put out there, and then you will be able to exploit them further. For now, let's just grab this tile here and turn it into a farmer's quarter. You can see, based on our production, it's going to take us 14 turns. Moving up one tile, we were greeted by some guests. We don't know who they are yet, but needless to say, there's 4 of them. There are 4 total units, but they are all of tribe. So they're still, by numbers, stronger than us, but we're definitely going to want to reinforce our position, just in case they decide to get froggy. We'll select our units over here, start moving them over. And now that we've seen them for a full turn, we have now met the Hittites. And unfortunately, because they just advanced to Era, their tribes just became scouts, which is not great for us. We're going to try to move around, not only blocking their advance, but also getting us closer to our city to be able to defend it. Remember that influence we spoke of? We're gaining 7 per turn because of our city. So I think it's about time to put down another outpost before the Hittites do it and claim this territory. Now, founding an outpost here is only going to cost 10 influence. The further away from your city, the more influence it would cost. You can see here, this one would take 60. I'm not in love with any of these positions here. These are not great outpost positions, but I think we need to do it just by virtue of claiming this territory. So let's find the best that we can, and I'd be willing to bet the best that we can is probably over here. All right, the best I can probably find here is this 6 and 5 for an 11, which is a really crappy outpost, but at least it puts them down and claims the territory. Now let's go meet the Hittites.
Do something clever today. Sign this treaty.
I must ruminate.
They want to be able to trade luxury resources, and I'm not too keen on that quite yet. You can see they're already having a militaristic affinity, but I don't necessarily trust them, so we're just going to refuse this right now and carry on. Something to note about the AI. The Boudica archetype, for instance, has some different flavor to it. For one, they're militarist and cool-headed, which gives them sort of their personality. They also have some biases and some strengths that the AI gets, and it sort of defines who they are. In this case, Boudica is a warlord, so they get +2 combat strength with their emblematic units, aka unique units. They have Crusader, which basically makes them stronger when influenced by other religions, and then they have a bias. They have a bias of being an avenger. In other words, they will retaliate until extermination of the aggressor. I think we're just going to carry on and bid Boudica adieu. All right, we've put down that outpost, and based on the production that this outpost has, it'll be completed in 5 turns. I think we're going to go ahead and send our hunting party over to this territory. We're going to want to put down an outpost there sooner rather than later. When you zoom out, you can see where Hattusa is, and that's where Boudica is from. And you can see that they're starting to expand here by these different territories. Now when we zoom back in, it goes right back into our map. But let's definitely start moving back over here. Alright, so we've made our way to this region. And when we go ahead and select we want to claim this territory with an outpost, you can see that it would take 70 influence. So we need to still wait a few more turns before we're going to be able to do that. Since we're here, we might as well kill a couple more animals. In this case, this is an easy fight, so we'll just instantly resolve it. We've unlocked Calendar, which gives us the Artisan's Quarter and the Granary. Next up on our tech, I think it's about time we get some archers. Alright, we completed our Farmer's Quarters, and you'll notice now that we have 3 population limit for food, and we've increased it to 9 total in the city. This mechanic is rather important to pay attention to, because you'll get to a point, especially when you're newer to the game, you'll have all these populations limited and you won't be growing anymore. And it's basically because you need more places for your population to live and to work. But now that we've completed that farmer's quarter, I think it's time to put down the astronomy house. You can see this astronomy house will give us +3 to food and +3 to science. But that -10 to stability. Now the stability here, you can see when you highlight over stability on the city screen, right now we get +20 based on our base value. We're getting +40 based on our ideology, which is our empire bonus, and +50 because it's our capital. We're only losing 10 stability because of that one farmer's quarters. This is what you need to keep an eye on. Now we got a population gain in Babylon. Remember, we were going to gain it by food anyways. Well, because we have city growth prioritized, it put that next population in food. And you can see, because of that, we're getting +12 food from our farmers. So we're gaining food from exploitation of the tiles, we're gaining food from the district itself, and we gain it because we're specializing our population as farmers. We've reached enough influence where we can claim another territory by putting down an outpost. Now right now it's not really recommending anywhere, probably because these tiles just are not great. This 8 and 9 right here seems to be decent. Better yet, here's a 10 and 8, and we'll go ahead and take this one. I don't love the fact that it's butted up against that opposing territory, but at least it's protected by the cliffs. Now this outpost will be completed in just 3 turns. We've completed carpentry, on to the next tech. Let's go ahead and unlock the ability to grab our horse resources. And now that our hunting party is in an outpost area, they will be able to heal. Even though this outpost is not done, they're still able to heal because this is our territory. Remember when I told you that outposts can only do so much? Well, one of the things they can do is throw down artisan quarters, but it costs influence. But by doing that, we would gain the ability of these resources. For instance, if we put the artisan quarter here, on the gemstone, we get +4 stability per gemstone in every single one of our cities, and +2 money per gemstone on the market quarter. There's also some wondrous effects. There's some different criteria before you can actually capitalize on the wondrous effects. Usually locked behind some sort of technology. For instance, on gemstone, it's patronage. But because we want to increase our production in our cities, I think it's probably good to grab this marble. So we're just going to spend 33 influence and throw down the artisan quarters right here on this marble. Now, up in the top right, you can see it's showing marble as a part of our resources. We've reached our first civic. When certain criteria are completed in your game, you'll unlock the ability to pick civics. Now, civics require influence to enact. So you click show details here, and it gives you the option. It says, hey, you can do this or this. Now, there are different ideologies. For instance, progress versus tradition, liberty versus authority, world versus homeland, collectivism versus individualism. As you select these, you'll be pushing the bar further to the right or further to the left. You can see here, if I enact natural right, we're going to get +5 influence in our main plaza because of natural right. But because we've pushed progress over, we're also going to get +5 stability on all cities and +5 science on all cities or outposts, as opposed to +10 stability on all of our cities. So I think we're definitely going to take natural right.
Why was this even a question? Let's keep it simple. We've been here. It's our place.
Now, this is sort of the civics tree. Now, I can't tell you how you unlock each different one. So far for us, they've been sort of random based on what we've done in the game. In fact, in the game I'm using to learn about the game, I've unlocked one of these way out here before I've unlocked any of these. You see here we have another one for legitimacy. Let's go ahead and select it, and it would cost us 16 influence to pick either customary laws or codified laws. Unfortunately, we only have 14 right now, so we're going to hold off. Something of importance that I wanted to show you. When you click on the society button, this is where you'd go to see your civics, but it also brings up the influence map. And you can see how much influence other territories have on your territories based on what cities they have providing that influence. Now, again, because we're still trying to figure this out, not exactly sure how this works, but from what I can see, when you have a city, it exacts more influence than, say, having an outpost. And when you have more population, it enacts more influence than if you had a little bit of population. It looks like we were right about the Hittites. They have decided to attack. Now, this doesn't look very good for us. They look like they have some horsey boys and we only have our regular boys, but this is going to have to do for now. We're going to click manual battle and we're going to see what we can do against their horsey boys. I want to have... Now, something to note about the battles. If they take this area and keep it for a certain amount of turns, they basically win the battle. I think we're going to leave one guy here on the top of this hill, but then put one guy over here in our encampment to make sure that we can keep it. With that, we'll end the deployment. And here comes the horsey boys. 38 damage to us, not too shabby. I think we're going to move these guys to the right.
Follow me.
And then move these guys in. Now, fortunately, again, we're on that river site, but at least they can't get into our area. And you can see if we made a direct attack against them, it would not be smart. They would only lose 5 to 25. We'd lose 37 to 51. So we're just going to go ahead and defend this position on both the fronts. And while that battle's going on, we still have an empire to manage. You can see here we've accessed another artisan quarter. Now, when you have an artisan quarter district available in a city, you don't have to spend influence to grab it. It's literally a build. We're definitely going to go ahead and grab some of these beautiful incenses because they will give us +5 money and +4 stability per incense. And we're also going to queue up the horses ranch. It's going to give us +3 science per adjacent research quarter. Not really useful right now. It's going to give us the ability to build the horsey boys. On our technology screen, we've completed city defense, and I think it's time to go into bronze working so that we can get our unique units. It probably is going to come in handy against the Hittites. We're going to need to grab that copper, though. Alright, the Hittites attacked again, and we've hit round 2 of 3. All we have to do is maintain. So we're just going to defend and defend once again. Now, because these boys are suffering a little too much, I think it's time to switch positions. So we're going to move these guys out and these guys in. And now you've seen, it says, hey, we've reached the end of this actual turn in game. So we're going to have to complete it next turn. So we got to click end turn. Brings the game to the next turn, and then the battle will continue. But over in Babylon, we can actually start creating units. Let's build some archers, shall we? We can select archers, move them ahead of the queue. And you can see we could build them straight out with 215 gold, but we don't have 215 gold, so we're just going to have them build them the slow way. Unfortunately, we lost that battle. Our outpost is still here, but I'm not sure how much longer that one's going to last. And the Hittites have left our territory, which will give us a little bit of time to bolster our defenses. It looks like we finally finished bronze working. Let's get that copper immediately so we can start building our unique units. Looks like this is a busy turn. We've actually been able to create our first religion. We're going to go to polytheism or shamanism. Now we have 3 total territories, or we can go +1 faith per population. Now I know we're sort of limited on territories because we're kind of backed in this corner, so maybe shamanism would be the way to go. Also, we've actually completed our beautiful archers, so we're going to combine them with our other units. Additionally, in Babylon, we have finished the copper mine research, so we're going to be able to throw the copper mine here, and that will be completed in 4 turns. But I think it's pretty vital, so we're just going to go ahead and quick build it here. Now, with it complete, we can actually build our beautiful unique units. So last time I actually quick built something else instead of the copper mine by mistake. Now we have the copper mine, which gives us the ability to build our unique unit. We are definitely going to load some of these boys up. Let's go with 3, shall we? I think it's also a good time to convert Merfic into a city. You can see that we have a max city cap of 2. You can raise this cap by certain civics and certain technologies. Needless to say, the longer you go through the game, the higher that city cap will be. We want another city because it's going to give us a better FIMS output, food, industry, money, and science, but also another area to build units. Let's go ahead and evolve it for 160 influence. And there we are. Now, just like over in Babylon, Sapar has its resources it's extracting from the environment and from its districts. The first district we're going to put up, not a district at all. You can see we can still build our unique unit even though the copper is in that other region. And we need some units right now. Unfortunately, whenever you create a unit, it's going to eat a population. Now you can see here our population growth is not great. It says it's going to take 75 turns, but I believe this might just be because it's the first turn. So why don't we load one of these guys up and we'll see what it looks like next turn. And look at this. Formal war has been declared by the Hittites. Now winning a war inside Humankind is a little bit different. You actually have to bring their war support down to 0 to make them surrender. Our war support goes up whenever we win battles, capture cities, or ransack trade routes. So we need to make sure we keep our war support up, and theirs we need to reduce down as low as possible. And you can see they're starting with war right here with a lot of units. I mean a lot of units. They have 2 warriors, an archer, and a scout against our poor little city. We're going to instantly resolve and lose this city pretty quickly. Sapar has been captured. Don't worry, we will get it back. But that is for another episode. You kind of can see the ebb and flow of the game. I wish I could answer all the questions that you have about the game. I know my first hour or 2, the questions were just exploding out of my head. The long and short of it, though, is just pay attention to these cities. Watch your population max, manage your stability, grow your resources. Additionally, don't always think you need to build a new district. Sometimes you can just build infrastructure. Infrastructure is just going to be inside your city and just give you that effect. Whereas districts, remember, are going to lower your stability around your city. Really like that game mechanic. Now, who knows how this game would end up? I just wanted to kind of give you a little intro to the game. If you think we should do a full-on Let's Play on this series, let me know. If you're like, Humankind is kind of saturated on YouTube, because it kind of is, let me know that too. We also have our Ani series to look forward to. That much and more. Can't wait to hear from your feedback. I had a blast playing Humankind. I hope you had as much fun watching. Talk to you soon.